welcome into another edition of Tampa 2. And for those of you watching on video, you can already see we have decided to be festive and channel our ugly sweater Christmas energy for this. If you're just listening on the podcast, let me explain. We have Bree rocking our
Christmas vacation
Chevy
Chase base sweater.
And then I am wearing a sweater that I felt like was the most incredible Florida ugly sweater.
Yes, it is.
The sleeves look like a disco ball. And then we have pink flamingos wearing sunglasses and Santa hats. I saw this and was like, I've never before.
Love the pom-poms.
And yeah, little pom-poms on it. So we decided,
classic.
The Bucs may have lost this last week, but we are determined to keep the Christmas and holiday spirit alive. We're determined. If we're going to play on Christmas, by golly, we're going to have some Christmas spirit while we do it. So why don't we quickly dive into the Bengals game and what happened before moving on to brighter, hopefully, things.
Well, I think kind of what encompassed it was the statement that Todd Bowles made when he said the tale of two halves. Because you go back in going through the first two frames, and that was the best the Buccaneers had looked all season long. They were firing on all cylinders. They came out to a quick 17-0 start. They dominated defensively. I mean, on the first three possessions, they had the interception for 35 yards on that drive for the Bengals. Then they forced a punt for 0 yards on that drive, and then a punt for -6 yards. I mean, they were in. You looked at the points, the statistics. I mean, that entire first half, Mike Evans had 83 yards. The Bengals had 83 yards total offensively.
Mike Evans was single-handedly winning.
The Bucs had 13 first downs, and the Bengals had 14 offensive yards. I mean, it was just completely lopsided. And then the second half.
Yeah, if only we could have just stopped.
They flipped a switch, and then after the botch punt, they had 4 straight takeaways in 11 plays. And it's like the self-inflicted wounds once again popped up, with the costly penalties that kept them behind the chains, and then the turnovers. Like, you can't win that way. And even Todd Bowles was talking about it. They were able to use the pre-snap motion, the play action effectively in the first half. They were able to kind of exploit the underneath areas with the Bengals playing cover 3. But then in the second half, when they had those turnovers, it's not that they didn't go back to the play action, it's that they were forced out of it. So I think that's one of the things that's going to be critical this week going up against the Cardinals is, okay, can you play a clean football game and kind of reverse a lot of this perpetual cycle of issues that we've seen creep up throughout the season?
Yeah, I completely agree. The not beating yourself, that's just been the mantra the last 2 weeks, is that it felt like you were in a position to the first game. I mean, you immediately from the start put yourself at a disadvantage because of things that were more in your control. That there are always going to be other teams that make good plays. This is the NFL. There are a lot of talented people on both sides of the ball, but it's, can you make the other team beat you instead of giving them those opportunities and beating yourself? And it still felt like the penalties, it's not even that there are as many, it's when they're happening. It's both of these games. It's like if you were to watch the game and what was happening and say, this play would be the worst possible time for a penalty, that's when it came.
Yep.
So I agree with you on just the self-inflicted wounds, the discipline that you need on that side. And this is a team where, with the Cardinals, they are having the worst possible season. And so talk about times that you don't want to hand them a gift. I know it's Christmas. I know it's the giving season. We're not giving them anything.
Yes.
That's the plan. But yeah, the Bengals game, at least for me, I feel like the fact that the first half was so perfect, that's got to be encouraging to know that it's in there, to know that it's possible, to know that this team can do it. And especially, I think there's a difference in knowing that you have the ability to do it versus now you've actually seen it.
Yes.
And can we just hit that copy paste?
Yeah. Can we get back to that?
Can we just say, okay, so let's do that again and again and again and again? So I feel good about the fact that they saw that of everyone. And the phrase I felt like I heard everybody say this week was that everybody was on the same page.
Right.
And we've heard other games, they kept saying people weren't on the same page. And so hopefully that means that they can figure out that to start the game. And if you can do it against a team like the Bengals, you can do it against anybody. They're incredibly talented. So Yeah, I think that was, and I mean, I feel like those turnovers, that has to have been a little bit fluky in some ways because of the fact that Brady in particular and this offense, no matter what else was going on or not going on, they had been good at protecting the ball for the most part. And I think that basically there were as many turnovers, I think it was like in 11 plays, were as many as Brady had in 11 games before that. So to
Just
put that into
all
perspective, yeah. So, I mean, again, we are not far removed from talking about how he was just a few passes away from having the record of number of passes without throwing an interception. So I think that it is safe to say that this hopefully was the outlier. And the odds of this happening again, pretty dang low. So we can hope for that part of it. Also, I figure before we get into looking ahead to the Cardinals game, we should talk about the news that just came out that we're recording this Thursday morning. So last night found out that one Tristan Wirfs has made the Pro Bowl. So I wanted to hear just your thoughts on that and how exciting that is for him. And I know there's some other guys that are maybe going to be close alternates, but he's the one who made it just outright. And why that is, why he's the guy, and how excited we are that the fans recognize that.
Well, I just think it's encouraging, and you think even with the injuries this season, he still was on that list, and he has established himself as one of the best tackles in the NFL. And I think you just see it in the way that he approaches each and every day, the way he goes about it, always has a smile on his face, and is just tremendous in the trenches. And I think he's really a guy that's kind of become that anchor for this offensive line and keeping Brady upright and being, aggressive at the second level in the run game. I mean, he does so much for this team, and it's a different offensive line when he's in it. And so I think that's very, very well deserved for Tristan Wirfs.
Yeah, very excited for him. And hopefully, I figure we can now also talk about the injury front as we look ahead this week, since we've been without our Pro Bowl guy.
Yes.
But exciting to see that he was on the injury report as limited, that he actually was back at practice doing some things.
Julio Jones.
Along with Julio Jones. So tell us for the Bucs injury report what we know. Again, we are recording this Thursday morning, which means we only have Wednesdays to go off of at this point. So what stands out to you?
Yes, well, Jamel Dean still didn't practice, along with Carl Nassib, Keanu Neal, Donovan Smith, Vita Vea, and Antoine Winfield. So those,
quite a list of people.
Some big names.
Some people we'd prefer to have on the field.
Yes, but I will say I think it is encouraging to see how guys have stepped up, especially with Shaq Barrett being on IR and not having Carl Nassib. The way that Anthony Nelson has come in and stepped up has been really encouraging to see. And even the big sack that Devin White and both he and him had on Joe Burrow for 23 yards. Yeah, it was negated by the penalty, but plays like that, he consistently is wreaking havoc around the line of scrimmage. So I think you're going to continue to need to see that as these guys work back. And, Todd was saying earlier in the week that Jamel Dean, is still a little bit ways off. So we'll need some guys to come up big in the secondary.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. And I know that the Cardinals also have all sorts of injury issues, that it has officially been confirmed that the Bucs will be facing their third string quarterback, which we would love to say means good things for us. It seems like you'd be able to say, oh, you're facing a third string quarterback. Man, that's gonna mean such amazing things, that they're gonna win for sure. And then that's not really how it's gone so far this season.
Yeah.
The whole backup
didn't go
quarterback
so well
thing
with Brock Purdy.
Yeah, the whole backup quarterback thing, it's so interesting. And, I think that I'm sure part of it is not having the tape and, not being able to diagnose as many things. So what do you think in your mind, it being Trace McSorley, instead of Kyler Murray and instead of Colt McCoy, what is it going to mean facing a guy like him?
I think, honestly, it's not a lot's going to change with their offense. And I think it goes back to what Todd Bowles was saying earlier this week. They all have that running ability. Yeah, they don't have the elite speed that Kyler Murray does, so that changes it a little bit, but they're still going to utilize their playmakers, get the ball in DeAndre Hopkins' hands, get the ball in James Conner's hands, who's kind of that triple threat. All of these things they're going to do to try and exploit defenses. So I think, it's kind of you game plan in the same way for whoever is there, and, try to get home with pressure up front.
Yeah. So tell me, what are those keys to the game that you think are still the same either way, and maybe on both sides of the ball, some of the things that you feel like are going to be important for this team?
I think, honestly, going into this one, it's more so on the Bucs being disciplined and not necessarily the going up against this Cardinals team, but just, okay, can this team put together a complete game? Can they play penalty and turnover free football? Because we've seen that over and over. And when you get behind the 8 ball, when you are forced to come from behind, well, then you have to be one-dimensional and you're not able to dial up the things that play into your strengths. You know, they couldn't go back to the play action and the pre-snap and all these things that they had that had been so successful for them. They weren't able to do that. And so it's, okay, can you have success on first and second down to create those opportunities to get down into the red zone and sustain drives? That has really been one of the biggest issues for this team.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's going to be making sure you take care of the ball on the offense, because it does feel like the Cardinals offense, you're not going to want to have to put a lot of pressure on Trace McSorley. They're not going to want to make him do these, 80-something yard drives every time. Right. And so I think about the fact of the Bengals game, when you're giving the ball away, the Bengals 4 scoring drives ended up all the yardage it took to do it, all added up to less than 100 yards total on 4 drives.
Yes.
They had to go like 13 yards. They had to go whatever. And of course, that's going to make it a lot easier on them. That's what you don't want to give to a guy like Trace McSorley or their offensive. Right. Make him have to drive the length of the field. And so when you know that there are guys like J.J. Watt, like Budda Baker, who can make plays, who can, that kind of thing, I think you don't want to give any of that to them where it can make it easier on their offense. Right. So the more you take care of the ball and at least maintain decent field position, I think that's going to be, if you're not scoring, at least in a position to be able to punt it away down the field, to not be turning it over. I think that's going to be really important. How about some matchups you're excited to watch?
Ooh. I am going to go with the offensive line in its entirety against J.J. Watt, for being honest. Because the Cardinals use JJ in a variety of ways. It's not just, okay, we're going to use him off the edge. I mean, they have him everywhere along the line to kind of create those disadvantageous matchups against guys. But he has established himself as one of the best edge rushers in the NFL. He has, a vast array of moves, is able to stop and start on a dime. And he's a guy that you can't have on an island one-on-one. You've got to double, you've got to triple team him. He, can run through guys with power. He can use his hands to move around them, and he's lethal everywhere he lines up. So can the offensive line, I don't want to say neutralize, because there's no way to completely take him out of a game, but can they contain him enough to give Brady enough time or to get the run game going? I mean, he had 3 sacks against Denver. You saw just absolute menace. And then you have Budda Baker. Yep. So my second is going to be Budda Baker against Tom Brady, because, again, he's just that versatile chess piece. He can line up as that, single high guy in the back. He has the awareness, the route recognition, the ball tracking skills, but then the man coverage skills to line up in the nickel, and just his closing speed is insane. I mean, the sideline range, he is everywhere. Yep. And his instincts, his ability to cover ground is absolutely probably unparalleled, honestly, in the NFL. And I think, today I'm sure he's a guy that Tom Brady will highlight, and our offensive coordinator is certainly going to know exactly where he is on every single play. So that's someone that they're going to have to key in on, and they blitz all of them. I mean, he's effective on the A and B gap blitzes. So how can this offensive line hold up to really get things going for this Bucs offense?
Yep, I agree. Those were definitely 2 that I was going to say as well. So instead, I'll just throw out basically our outside linebackers against Trace McSorley. He is a little bit more mobile, I think, than if you were going to face Colt McCoy. And when it comes to guys who maybe have less experience, I think there's a tendency to kind of get a little happy feet in the pocket, want to just kind of make some plays on your own with your feet. If you're not liking what you're seeing downfield, that there's just that tendency to resort to the scrambling potentially a little bit sooner. And so can they set the edge, contain him, and then, of course, try to ruffle him, try to get him a little bit unhappy in the pocket. I think that's going to be really important to give the rest of your defense time to maybe try to get an interception, to, make some of those other plays. That it's going to be, can you really make sure that when he tries to go around the edge that you're not giving him some of those momentum boosting plays where he's getting to run for a first down, or, some of those type things. I think really force him to sit in there and make the plays, and can he handle it when you're getting the rush? All right, how about a player to watch for you?
Ooh, I am going to go with, you went outside linebackers. I'm going to go with inside linebackers. I think this is a game where when you have Trace McSorley, your third string quarterback, I think they're certainly going to try and get this run game going to take some of that pressure off their offensive line that's been plagued with injuries. They've had 9 different starting combinations. A new guy in there that's trying to gain the confidence, the poise in the pocket. They're going to be trying to get the ball off quick with like a short passing game, or to utilize their triple threat in James Conner, who, is kind of that old school battering ram style of runner, but then also he's effective in pass protection and, out of the backfield on kind of those wheel routes or the swing passes. So I think he's going to be huge. Can they be disciplined in maintaining gaps and stopping him to try and force it into McSorley's hands and make the Cardinals become one-dimensional?
All right, and for me, I think I'm going to go with Mike Evans, because I feel like we saw again that this was the game last week of what it looks like when you can go to Mike early, often. This felt like they got their chemistry back, their mojo back. And the Cardinals, I mean, their DBs have been so beat up. So many corners have been injured. Yes, Budda Baker is incredible and can make plays everywhere, but I just have to imagine that when it comes to the corners that they've had out there, and again, we don't know for sure who's going to be available, but this last week they were playing guys that haven't really played much before. And you tell me Mike Evans is going against guys that are getting pulled up from a practice squad and haven't really played much, and I'm going to pick that all day. So I'm hoping this can be the game where Mike gets in the end zone, maybe even a couple times, this is that 100-yard, game that we haven't seen from Mike in a while. I feel like this could be it. All right, so we will close with our quote of the week segment. Ooh. What do you have?
I am going to go with a quote on a different wide receiver, but it was the quote from Todd Bowles this week on Chris Godwin. And I loved what he said, and just him working back. He said, he's hard on himself. He's a worker regardless. He's going to overcome all odds. He's going to do everything he needs to do. He works on his craft constantly. He tried to get back as fast as he could. He didn't take days off. He worked overtime, triple time probably. Getting back to normal, you forget what he went through because you're seeing him right now. But everything in the offseason and all of the treatment and all of the rehab that he went through, I don't know if a normal person could have gone through that. I don't think I could have gone through that. And I just think that was a huge testament to Godwin's process, the progression that he's made, and the production that you're seeing from him now.
Yep.
And just that's incredible, because you almost forget a little bit of what he went through.
You can take it for granted.
during the offseason and coming off of that January surgery.
Yeah.
So
that's amazing. I love that. I chose a quote that has absolutely nothing to do with football, but it just made me laugh this week. It was actually something that Ryan Jensen said to me when I was interviewing him at their O-line Christmas event.
Oh, yeah.
They took kids.
That was great.
They took kids shopping. I was interviewing him for the vlog, and he said, quote, offensive linemen, we're just holly jolly people. And so we just want to make other people holly and jolly as well. And I thought that was so delightful. And I felt like, again, as things have been a little rough on the football field lately, I just felt like going into this game on Christmas, holly jolly group of people. And that's what we're going for right now, is that we hope everyone has just as holly and jolly of a time as the O-line did taking kids shopping. And there were just so many amazing holiday events that the players have done. It is incredible. Yes. So if people have not seen it, make sure you check out on Buccaneers.com all the coverage of it. So many position groups, so many individual guys. Like, we're talking hundreds of kids and families have been helped. Again, the reminder that even though recently the record hasn't been what we want, this team is still making a really big difference in the community. And that is my Christmas holiday thought that I am leaving with everybody. So hopefully we will also be getting a win on Christmas Day. That could be a great gift to all the Bucs fans out there. So again, thank you so much for joining us on this edition of Tampa 2, and we'll see you next week.